Hello, welcome back to the RC Pilots log. My name's Rob. Today we're going to Maiden the Robbe Airliner, which I've converted to twin 50mm EDFs. But before we head out to the field, let's take a look at what I've done. So this is a Robbe Airliner, and it was in production the early 2000s, 2001, 2002, from what I can find. You certainly can't get them anymore, and this was very kindly donated to me by a member of our club, and I decided that running the stock brushed pushers just wasn't going to cut it for me, and there was nothing better to do to this plane than to put some EDFs into it and make a modern take on this classic airliner RC plane. I've opted for two FMS 50mm EDF units. They are running on a 4-cell and put out around 850 grams of thrust each. In its stock form, the plane should weigh around 1,440 grams and has about a 35 grams a decimeter squared wing loading. As it is at the moment, all ready to fly, it's 1,550 grams, and that gives it about 40 grams per decimeter squared wing loading, which is in the region of kind of an acrobatic trainer, that kind of style of flying, but with EDF power and in an airliner form factor. I've fitted landing gear, retractable landing gear. These are from I can't get it in shot. These are from the Durafly Vampire. After that took a hard landing and they came out, I decided that that would be better off belly landing, and these then lended themselves quite nicely to the airliner. I recessed holes into the fuselage, wheel wells, and they just fold flat and line flush with the centre of the fuselage here. These recesses were, oval recesses, were for hand launching it as the original plane. I have added a secondary nylon bolt at the rear and reinforced the centre one. There's a lot more forces going on than in the stock. The nose wheel is steerable. That's using a pull system and just a small 9-gram servo there. It was fairly tricky to get right. Ideally I should have had the nose wheel the opposite way round, so it opened this way, then the forces would be spread into the fuselage rather than trying to pull the nose wheel out. However, as it's a tricycle landing gear and a jet airliner, I should be landing on the mains first and reducing the amount of force on the nose wheel. Got two FMS Predator 40 amp ESCs recessed into the wings here. That gives them a nice bit of cooling, but also it's kind of the only place I could put them on this jet. In terms of the control surfaces on the elevator and rudder, they're as per the manual, as per the original stock instructions, stock kit. And if I just remove this piece of tape here, I can pull the hatch out. The kit originally was designed to use standard size servos, so I 3D printed adapter plates here to fit in standard 9-gram servos. These are Corona DS939 metal gears, digital metal gear servos, and they're using a traditional style of linking push rods with wheel collets or collet style linkage. And that works very nicely. Tubes to keep the push rods in order, and I've just epoxied in the 3D printed plates and screwed the servos in. I've added ailerons. It was a stock, it's a 3-channel. I cut these from scale measurements, and initially I thought they were quite small, but actually I think it's an EDF jet, so at speed they're going to do the job, I hope. And again, they're Corona DS939 Metal Gear servos, and a usual control linkage stoppers, and some hinged, pinned hinges there. And actually these ones I 3D printed. 3D printed these hinges, and they use a small dress pin as the hinge pin, and they work out quite nicely. Landing gear is just epoxied into recesses, and I used my Dremel style multi-tool to cut those out. So these brushed pushers should originally go on the rear of the nacelles, and they weigh 70 grams each, including the props. These EDF units are 75 grams each, including the motors. So there's a bit of a no-brainer there in terms of the weight. And also I'm able to utilise the nacelles as thrust tubes. Initially I was going to be making thrust tubes out of some acetate, rolled to size, but I discovered and found that as I was modifying the nacelles, the shape and the inner diameter was lending itself very well to being a thrust tube itself. So they come in two halves, and I hollowed them out, opened up the diameter at the front to fit the EDF unit in, and then just opened up the rear to the right diameter. The exit is actually about 90% of the total fan swept area, which is spot on about ideal. You don't want it to be 100% because then you're not accelerating the air as it comes out, and you're not generating the efflux speed. You won't lose thrust, but you will lose a bit of performance from the EDF. And I wanted to retain as much as possible of the original. I cut a little bit off at these angles just to open up the outlet a little bit without compromising the outer edges of it. So what I'll do now is I'll take the wing off, and I'll show you how I've managed to squeeze everything in, and it is a squeeze. So there's a fair amount to squeeze in under here. I'm using my FlySky Palladium PL18 transmitter and FlySky FTR 10S receivers. And as you can see here, it's all mounted along the top of the wing in order to kind of get it all in the same space. Could do with a little bit of tidying up, but ultimately I've recessed the cables into the foam as much as I could, and what's caught there, and I fed the power wires from the ESCs through an existing hole, and then soldered them onto a single XT60 connector there. It's using a 4S3300, and it balances out quite nicely on the original CG. So that's the fully loaded wing there. And in order to get everything to fit inside the fuselage, I opened out significantly this area for the wiring and the receiver to fit in. It's the same width as that, apart from a small pocket here where the original electronics would have gone. Again, the same thing here. I widened the fuselage out and hollowed out a lot in the nose, and the battery slides in here. This 4-cell 3300 slides in and is kind of a friction fit in there. The only drawback to this is, in order to remove the battery, you must remove the wing, and the nose gear just goes in and holds it in nicely in flight as well. But it's in very tight. It's not coming out. It's not going to come out at all. So steerable nose gear, nose retract. So all of those wires come back to the receiver, and you kind of have to put it together. You kind of have to nudge all the wires in and make sure they're not being clamped down onto the wing. So that's effectively all I've done to put it together. Taken probably about a month, because I had to wait 2 weeks for the FMS 50mm 11 blade fans to arrive. They were from Banggood, delivered actually much faster than Banggood shipping recommended, and they were £23 each, which I think is absolutely astounding value. And the FMS Predator ESCs, 40mm ESCs, are £11 each on Banggood again. So, you know, sort of £60–70 for a power setup like this that is over 1,000 watts and 70 amps is quite spectacular, I think. They're rated at 850 grams of thrust each. You know, it's a sort of 1,800 grams of thrust from 250mm on a airframe that's weighing 1,500–1,600 grams. It should perform very, very well. Okay, so I'm going to get all this loaded up, get up to the field, and we'll see if it'll fly.
Yeah.
You're gonna circle around it.
No, I was just getting a picture for the front to say